for some Republican reaction right now to what we heard today in the jobs numbers and what we heard today from the president. We're joined by the number 3 Republican in the House of Representatives, Indiana Congressman Mike Pence. He's joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And Congressman Pence, thank you for the time. Appreciate you joining us from this recess. And you heard a little bit what the president just said right there. Is there anything you and your fellow Republicans can sit down with this White House and agree on in terms of additional steps to help the economy?
Well, look, let's recognize that the president is right in one regards, and when he said there's no quick fix. It was 18 months ago that they passed their nearly $1 trillion stimulus bill, and that economic policy has failed. Unemployment on the rise, a jobless recovery, even if it's a recovery at all. What's obvious to the American people is that we need a new approach. The approach that Washington has taken to date has not succeeded, to use the president's terms, in breaking the back of this difficult economy. And Republicans are anxious to sit down at the table with Democrats and with this administration and take actions that are necessary to put Americans back to work. But the first thing we ought to do, Peter, is make sure that no American in the city or on the farm sees a tax increase on January 1 of 2011. And when the president again today talked about only extending middle-class tax cuts, that was a disappointment to millions.
Well, let me just ask you, can you at least agree with Democrats in this White House on simply that, extending the middle-class tax cuts, even if you continue to debate what happens to the top 2%?
Well, look, it just doesn't make any sense to allow taxes to go up on capital or on income for job creators in this country. But with regard to whether Republicans would be willing to accept extending current tax relief for people under $200,000 a year, I actually think we can still win this fight, Peter. I mean, the reason why more than 10 Democrats in the House have now called for extending all the Bush tax relief, several prominent Democrats in the Senate have called for that, is because I think millions of Americans know, at the very least, let's take action this fall to make sure that no American sees a tax increase on January 1st. But, the disappointing thing is the president's back to talking about more stimulus, more boutique tax cuts, more of the same policies from the same team that have failed to get this economy moving again.
Well, Congressman, your own statement today after the jobs report came out says Washington desperately needs to return to the proven formula of fiscal discipline and fast-acting tax relief that will put Americans back to work. Democrats point out that Republicans are essentially sending a mixed message here. You're talking about tax relief, but you're not talking about how you pay for it. Isn't that all going to add to the deficit? Aren't you worried about that as well?
Well, we are concerned about the deficit, but first and foremost, we need to be concerned about the deficit in this economy and the fact that 15 million Americans are struggling with unemployment. Many, many more have simply given up looking for jobs. And the first thing we ought to do is allow Americans to keep more of their hard-earned tax dollars. We ought to prevent what could be one of the largest tax increases in American history from taking effect next year. And then we ought to look for the kind of tax relief and reform that will get the economy moving. And you bet, Peter, we need to sit down. If Republicans are awarded the opportunity to lead Congress again, we need to take such action to restore fiscal responsibility to Washington, D.C. Government spending, government borrowing is crowding out private lending. We've got to put our fiscal house in order as well, and we will.
Congressman, real quick, one specific, a payroll tax holiday, could that get Mike Pence's support?
Well, we'll be interested in looking at the details. The rumor mill, Peter, is telling us that they're talking again about a boutique-style tax relief that would only apply to people that have been unemployed for more than 60 days being hired. Look, we know what works to get the economy moving again, and that is fiscal discipline in Washington, D.C., and across-the-board tax relief for working families, small businesses, and family farms. Let's prevent a tax hike in January. Let's debate across-the-board tax relief, and let's put our fiscal house in order and set aside this small ball approach to economic growth that's resulted in little or no progress in this economy for 18 months.
All right, Congressman Mike Pence, Republican of Indiana, thanks very much for joining us.